Hello everyone. Welcome back to today's story. In this episode, we step into a quiet yet deeply touching Christmas moment with James, Diep, and little Nye. There are no big arguments, no dramatic twists, just the warmth of a home slowly filling with light, laughter, and simple love. As they decorate the Christmas tree together, every ornament, every small conversation, and every shared smile becomes a reflection of something much bigger: family, healing, and togetherness. Through Nye's innocent joy, Diep's gentle care, and James's quiet presence. Stay with us until the end to feel the calm, warmth, and meaning hidden in these small moments. And don't forget to subscribe to help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Your support means the world to us. The late afternoon light slowly drifts through the thin curtains, spreading a soft golden glow across the living room floor. Dust particles float lazily in the air, catching the sunlight like tiny sparks. In the corner of the room stands a medium-sized artificial Christmas tree, still bare and slightly crooked, its branches folded inward as if waiting patiently to be brought to life. Around it, cardboard boxes sit open, spilling out tangled strings of lights, colorful ornaments, ribbons, and bits of tinsel. Diep kneels on the floor, carefully sorting through the decorations. Her movements are slow and deliberate, as if she's afraid that moving too fast might disturb the calm of the moment. James stands near the window, holding a long string of Christmas lights that seems determined to stay knotted no matter how carefully he pulls at it. Meanwhile, little Nye sits cross-legged on the rug, her small hands clutching a shiny red ornament, her eyes sparkling brighter than the decoration itself. "Uncle James," Nye calls out, lifting the ornament high above her head. "This one is really big. Can it go on top of the tree?" James turns around, pretending to think very seriously. That's usually where the star goes," he says, squinting at the tree. "But maybe this year we can do something different." Diep looks up and smiles gently. "We can put it somewhere special, Nye. Somewhere you can see it easily every day." Nye nods eagerly, scooting closer to the tree. She carefully hands the ornament to Diep, watching with intense focus as Diep hooks it onto a sturdy branch near the front. When it's done, Nye claps her hands quietly, clearly proud of her contribution. "It looks happy there," Nye says with certainty. James chuckles. "I think you're right." The room feels unusually peaceful. There's no rush, no raised voices, no background noise, except for a soft Christmas playlist playing from James's phone on the table. The music isn't loud or overwhelming, just gentle enough to fill the space with warmth. Outside, the sky slowly shifts from pale blue to a deeper shade, signaling the approach of evening. James sighs and shakes the string of lights again. "I swear, every year these things get more complicated." Diep laughs softly. "Or maybe you're just less patient every year." "That's possible," he admits, handing one end of the lights to her. "All right, teamwork. Let's do this together." They begin wrapping the lights around the tree, moving slowly so Nye can follow along. Nye crawls closer, her fingers hovering near the bulbs. When the lights are finally plugged in, she gasps softly as they flicker to life. "It's glowing," she whispers, eyes wide. "Like magic." Diep pauses and looks at her. Do you like Christmas a lot? Nye nods without hesitation. Yes, because everyone is together, and there are lights everywhere, and cookies. James laughs. Cookies are definitely an important part of Christmas. As they continue decorating, Diep reaches into the box again and pulls out a small, slightly worn paper bag. She hesitates for a moment before opening it. Inside are a few handmade ornaments, paper snowflakes, small cardboard shapes painted in bright colors, some with glitter glued unevenly along the edges. Nye immediately recognizes them. Those are mine, she says excitedly. I made them at school. James kneels beside her, picking one up carefully. Wow, these are really good. Look at this one. It even has glitter. Nye beams with pride. Teacher said I worked very hard. Diep holds a paper snowflake between her fingers, her expression softening. Then these should go in the best spots. Together, they hang Nie's handmade ornaments on the front of the tree. With each one, Nie tells a story. Who sat next to her while she made it, which colors she chose, and why some glitter accidentally spilled onto the table. James listens closely, responding with genuine interest, making Nye feel like every detail matters. As the tree slowly fills up, the atmosphere in the room changes. What once felt quiet now feels warm. The kind of warmth that doesn't come from heaters or blankets, but from shared moments and unspoken understanding. Diep steps back to look at the tree, brushing her hands against her knees. It's not very neat, she says thoughtfully. James tilts his head, studying it. I think that's what makes it nice. Nye looks confused. Why? Diep crouches down in front of her. Because when something isn't perfect, it shows that real people made it. That makes it special. Nye thinks about this for a moment, then nods slowly. Like my drawings, they're not perfect, but you still keep them. Diep smiles, a little surprised by her insight. Yes, exactly like that. James reaches into the box one last time and pulls out the star for the top of the tree. All right, final mission. Nye, want to help me? Nye's eyes widen. Really? He nods, lifting her carefully so she can reach the top. Her small hands tremble slightly as she places the star, but when it finally settles, she lets out a quiet cheer. We finished it, she says proudly. They all step back together, standing side by side, looking at the completed tree. The lights glow softly, reflecting off the ornaments and filling the room with a gentle sparkle. For a brief moment, everything feels calm and complete. Diep breaks the silence. We should take a picture. James agrees. Definitely. This is something we should remember. He sets his phone on a shelf, starts the timer, and quickly returns to stand beside them. Diep pulls Nye close, and James rests a hand lightly on Nye's shoulder. When the camera clicks, Nye bursts into laughter, caught mid-giggle. Afterward, they move to the small table. Diep pours warm milk for Nye and tea for herself and James. Nye swings her legs back and forth, humming along to the music. Can we decorate cookies later? She asks hopefully. James raises an eyebrow. That sounds like a big project. Diep laughs, one step at a time. Let's finish our drinks first. Nye pouts for a second, then nods, satisfied. She takes a big sip of milk, leaving a little white mustache on her lip. James points it out, and Nie laughs. trying to wipe it away with the back of her hand. As night fully settles in, the Christmas tree becomes aware of the room's heartbeat, glowing quietly in the corner. Diep watches Nee, her heart filled with emotion she doesn't voice. James notices her expression, but says nothing, choosing instead to sit there, sharing the silence. For now, that feels like enough. Later that evening, the house grows quieter, wrapped in the soft hum of winter night sounds. Outside, the wind brushes lightly against the windows, carrying the cool scent of the season. Inside, the Christmas tree continues to glow steadily, its lights reflecting off the walls and casting gentle shadows across the room. The decorations are finished now, but the feeling of togetherness lingers, settling into the space like a warm blanket. Nee sits on the floor with a coloring book spread open in front of her. She hums softly while coloring a picture of Santa Claus, occasionally pausing to switch crayons or ask Diep how to spell a word. Diep sits at the table nearby, folding small pieces of colored paper into simple stars, planning to hang them on the window later. James stands in the kitchen doorway, watching the two of them, a quiet smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Uncle James?" Nee suddenly asks without looking up. "Can Santa see our tree?" James blinks, then chuckles. "I think Santa can see everything this time of year." "Then he'll know we decorated it together," she says confidently. Diep looks up. "Why is that important?" Nye shrugs, still coloring. "Because when people do things together, it means they're good." James feels something stir in his chest at her words. He walks over and crouches beside her. "You're right. Doing things together is important." Nye smiles, clearly satisfied with the answer. A little while later, Diep heads into the kitchen to prepare a light dinner. The sound of chopping vegetables and the gentle sizzle of oil fills the air. James joins her, leaning against the counter. "Do you need help?" he asks. She nods. "Can you wash the vegetables?" He rolls up his sleeves and gets to work. For a moment, they cook in comfortable silence, the kind that doesn't feel awkward or forced. The rhythm of the kitchen feels familiar, almost natural. After a while, Diep speaks quietly. "I didn't think decorating the tree would take so much time." James smiles. Time goes faster when you're not watching it. She glances at him, then back at the stove. Nye seemed really happy. "She was," he says without hesitation. "You did a good job." Diep exhales softly. "I just want her to have good memories." James rinses the last of the vegetables and sets them aside. "She will. Nights like this matter more than we realize." They carry the food to the table, calling Nee over. She eagerly climbs onto her chair, chatting nonstop about her drawing and what colors Santa's coat should be. The meal is simple, but the atmosphere is warm. They eat slowly, listening to Nee's stories, laughing at her exaggerated expressions. After dinner, James clears the table, while Diep helps Nee get ready for bed. The child brushes her teeth carefully, insisting on doing it herself. When she's finally tucked in, Diep pulls the blanket up to her chin. "Ms. Diep," Nee whispers, her eyes heavy with sleep. "Can we turn the tree lights on tomorrow morning too?" Diep smiles. "Of course. Every day if you want." Nye nods, comforted. "Then it will always feel like Christmas." James stands quietly at the door, watching the moment. When Nye finally drifts off, Diep steps out and closes the door gently behind her. They return to the living room, now dim except for the glow of the Christmas tree. The decorations seem brighter in the quiet. James sits on the couch, and Diep joins him, leaving a small space between them. For a moment, neither speaks. "It's quiet," Diep says softly. James nods, but not an empty quiet. She looks at the tree. "I like it like this." "So do I." They sit there, listening to the faint ticking of the clock on the wall. The night feels unhurried, as if giving them permission to slow down. James breaks the silence. "Do you remember the first Christmas Nye spent here?" Diep smiles faintly. "She was so shy. She barely talked. And now, we can't get her to stop," he says, laughing quietly. "She's grown a lot," Diep replies. "Kids change so fast." James leans back against the couch. "That's why moments like today are important. They don't come back." Diep nods, understanding exactly what he means. Before heading to bed, Diep takes out the paper stars she folded earlier. Together, they tape them onto the window, spacing them carefully. From outside, the stars glow faintly, catching the light from the tree. When everything is done, James turns off the main lights, leaving only the Christmas tree illuminated. The room transforms instantly, softer, calmer. "Good night," Diep says quietly. "Good night," James replies. The next morning, Nye wakes up early, her excitement impossible to contain. She pads out of her room in her pajamas, rubbing her eyes, and freezes when she sees the Christmas tree still glowing softly in the dim light. "Ms. Diep," she whispers loudly. "Uncle James, the tree is still on." Diep comes out of the kitchen, smiling. "Good morning. I told you we'd turn it on again." Nye runs to the tree, crouching down to look closely at the ornaments. It looks even prettier in the morning. James joins them, holding 3 cups of warm milk. Careful not to touch the lights too much. They sit on the floor together, backs against the couch, sipping their drinks. Sunlight slowly fills the room, blending with the warm glow of the tree. "Can we add something else today?" Nye asks. Diep tilts her head. "Like what?" Nye thinks for a moment. "A wish." James raises an eyebrow. "A wish?" She nods seriously. "Teacher said Christmas is for wishes." Diep smiles. "Then we should do it properly." They cut small pieces of paper and hand one to Nye. "Write or draw your wish," Diep says. Nye grips her crayon tightly, concentrating. James and Diep write quietly as well. When they're done, they fold the papers and hang them on the tree with string. "What did you wish for?" Nye asks immediately. Diep laughs softly. "You're not supposed to ask." James smiles. "If you tell, it won't come true." Nye gasps and quickly covers her mouth. "Then I won't say anything." They stand back and look at the tree once more, now carrying not just decorations, but hopes. As the morning continues, they clean the house together, moving slowly, talking about small things. What to cook later, whether it might rain, what movie Nye wants to watch. Nothing dramatic happens, yet everything feels meaningful. In the afternoon, Diep bakes simple cookies with Nye, guiding her small hands carefully. Flour ends up everywhere, and Nye laughs every time she accidentally spills something. James takes pictures, capturing the messy joy of the moment. When the cookies are finally done, they sit together and eat them while watching a holiday cartoon. Ni leans against Diep, growing sleepy again. As the day fades into evening, the Christmas tree lights come on once more. The ornaments shimmer, each one holding a piece of the day inside it.